Welcome to the Living Wholehearted podcast, where we're helping leaders live with integrity.
Whether you're a mom or a CEO, you're a leader, and how you lead matters.
Welcome back to part 2 with Shawn and Marina Mitchell, and today we're going to talk about integrity and your marriage.
Marina is one of our fabulous Encourage 2020 breakout speakers, and she is a trainer of trainers when it comes to fitness. And Shawn and Marina started a ministry called Catalyst. Shawn, just tell us quickly about Catalyst. And if you wanted to learn more, you can definitely go to part 1 and listen in more detail. But Shawn?
Yeah, Catalyst is a faith-based nonprofit, and we mobilize volunteers, and we get donations of resources and funds and stuff, and we bring all of that together, and we do free home repairs for low-income homeowners in the community.
That is awesome, and we've seen firsthand that in action. It's an amazing ministry, and it's a different way of and a different expression of the church, capital C, which we love. You spoke about that in part 1. Shawn and Marina, for this podcast, and I want to hear a little bit more about the integrity in marriage piece. And what does integrity in marriage even mean? And how does a man, particularly, I'm speaking to you as a brother here in Christ, how does a man have integrity in their marriage? Outside of the big ones like don't have an affair.
Yeah, I think like when I hear the word integrity in terms of thinking about marriage, or even just the word integrity, I think in terms of like, well, you do what you say and you say what you do, and you live according to the values that you espouse. But I think it goes even deeper than that. Really, integrity is the result of something else. For me, approaching marriage, I was very much like, man, I've learned so much since then. I was looking for like the perfect woman who was going to make me happy.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're taught that's, yeah.
Well, and I believed that, and like I was just a hopeless romantic. And so I had all these ideals and dreams about what this person was going to be like someday.
Expectations maybe in there too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so then now I will say that I got lucky, and I found someone that really checks a lot of the boxes, but that's not what keeps a marriage healthy. That's not what keeps a marriage together. Because a lot of those things, the things that I was looking for as a young man in my 20s, hot-blooded, all of that, like a lot of that, like the honeymoon on that kind of stuff wears off in a couple of years. Yeah. And then you're left with someone that you want to spend the rest of your life with. You want to have a healthy marriage. And your motivation has to be completely different. So we learned a lot in those first couple of years. We learned a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really adjusted. There was a lot of expectation adjustment for both of us. Mm-hmm. And mine was this whole idea that Marina is there to make me happy. Mm-hmm. Like my life will be fulfilled. Like seriously, I can't overstate how much of a romantic I am. It's really, really ridiculous. And I it's part of my personality. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not sorry for it. I'm still pretty romantic. But I think that the pressure in me and really on Marina that placed on her to try to be like this focal point of my desire and expectation and happiness and all of these things was
meet every need.
Yeah,
kind of stifling.
Yeah, that might wear someone out.
Yeah. So what happens is that so I married this lady who is incredibly beautiful, has a wonderful personality, is capable, strong, smart. I mean, she had all of these things. These checks all the boxes and stuff. But then eventually, it's like you get used to that. Mm. And then what? Mm-hmm. And my reason for loving her and my reason for being devoted to her had to grow up and grow beyond that stuff. And it was around that time that I really started really understanding a little bit more about the dynamics of like what I bring to the marriage and what she brings to the marriage.
The dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marina, do you want to say anything about this?
Wow. Well, 26 years is a long time to go back and think through all of those things. But I think what I read a book maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and we used to think that our partner was there to make us happy.
Oh, yeah.
And in this book, it highlighted that marriage actually is to make us more holy.
This is Gary Thomas, right?
Oh,
Sacred Marriage?
Sacred
That's it.
Marriage.
Yes.
Great book.
Great.
Amazing, and really helped we were in a women's group actually, and it really helped all of us to see, okay, no, the other person is not meant to make us happy. This is so that we can become more like Jesus through the process of the dance, like you just said. Yeah.
Well, and so much of the time we think it's either or. And the truth is holiness, there is some deep joy in that holiness. Yeah. And there's something richer, deeper, as you're saying, Shawn, than just the surface that wears off. And I love that you're romantic, Shawn, and I can hear a bunch of women going, oh man, I wish I had that as my husband. But I love how honest you are to say, yeah, that wears off, and it puts high expectations on the spouse. So whichever one's the more romantic one, nobody's ever going to fulfill the movie type ideals. Mm-hmm. And yet there is something fun about trying, right? It's Valentine's Day, and to actually think and remember that it's Valentine's Day, that's probably an ingredient.
Yeah, that would be good.
Of integrity, of like making somewhat of an effort, even if it's not meeting every expectation.
Yeah.
What I heard too, as a means of integrity, when you just were talking about and sort of defining it and explaining how it works out in marriage, is it actually was about a deconstruction. I mean, you're in construction, and you had a deconstruction in your Shawn, in your thought process and expectations, and God broke that down. And from part one, you talked about how the Holy Spirit does that the best and does that in you. And many of our listeners a lot of them are going to be young in this journey, and maybe they just got engaged or married, and they're in that first, second year. And many actually, as we know, are giving up so much quicker because of their first challenge.
Right.
And what would you just really quickly say to couples that are in that space and feeling like, whoa, I mean, what's wrong with this? This is not what I signed up for. And how to carry a space of letting God reform their integrity in their covenant relationship of marriage.
Yeah, I would say it's a paradigm shift is what is needed. We're trying to fill the wrong thing. So when I was dating Marina, you know, and like I'm just like most other men, I'm really into acquisition. You know,
Mine.
Yeah, serious. That's you know, and that's part of that's how God hardwired us. We are built to acquire. We're built to achieve and to chase after a goal, climb up the mountain and take it over. You know, whatever, right? And so when we date our future wives, we are doing whatever it takes to acquire them. Yeah. And then we marry them, and often what happens is within a year, we just kind of stop trying because we got them. Well, but now that you got her, what are you going to do to keep her? And that's the lesson that I had to really, really learn. And I really started to understand, and I was familiar with the scripture in Ephesians chapter 4 before we got married, but man, that came true afterwards. So Ephesians 4 is where it talks about, it's like one of the most common scriptures that gets quoted partially out of context. And it's where it says, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. And then usually...
Tread lightly, my brother.
Yeah. And usually it stops there.
Yes, right.
But then what does it say? And husbands, love your wives and lay down your life for them, just as Jesus loved the church and laid down his life for the church to make her holy. And so, in my opinion, and what I came to learn practically, and as I submitted myself to Jesus and his lordship, what I came to learn is that I set the tone. I don't set the tone in a domineering manner, but I set the tone for self-sacrifice. So as I give my life up for my wife, that frees her up to kind of reciprocate. But, and this is kind of a IMHO, in my humble opinion. I think that the tone in marriage needs to be set by the man in humbling himself and dying for his wife. And that's something we're missing in America.
Yeah. It's there are a lot of things that are flip-flopped and confusing right now, and a lot of messages. And I kind of want to go down that rabbit trail, but there's so many more things that we need to talk about. And one of them is the hypersexualizing of our culture as well, which is part of what is feeding the flip-flop. It's part of it. How have you guys focused on one another, knowing that there are a lot of temptations all around? I love each saying that the man to set the tone, to humble, to serve, to sacrifice. Those are big words, and I'm wanting our listeners to recognize that you can't make yourself do that. You've got to have a relationship with a loving God and recognize how much God loves you and your brokenness to be able to do that for another. And it starts there. But what are the practical things you guys do to protect your marriage? I think it doesn't just happen. You have to be proactive in a hypersexual culture.
Well, I like the word that Jeff used, deconstruction. If we deconstruct it all the way down, it really comes to us as individuals. So we're both committed to love God more than we love each other. So that means every day when we sit with Jesus, He's the one who speaks to us, encourages us, convicts us, loves us, all of those things. And we're able to look at the temptations that we might be facing. And we have to face our God with that first. And we want to be clean before the Lord. So He cleans us out. And then I think it helps us just stay really committed to one another. As we talked about on our podcast when I was just here with you, Tara, every day is a choice. And when your feelings are waning, then you go by what you know and what you're committed to. So we try to stay committed to our faithfulness, our loyalty. What made us get married in the first place? I think a lot of people forget that. We don't so much anymore as empty nesters. We're home together all the time, but we used to go on dates every single week when we were raising our kids, whatever that looked like, if it was a morning date or afternoon or 4 a.m, or for us, it was a specific night every week that we went on a date and we paid a sitter. And I mean, we did it. And I'm so glad we did that, because every Thursday or whatever it was throughout the years, we were reminded why we fell in love, why we got married, why we committed our lives to each other, because in the mundaneness of every day, we can get irritated with each other and lose sight of that commitment.
Yeah, and children, when we had small children, they're like aliens that suck the joy out of your marriage.
They can.
Oh, that's horrible.
So we had to regularly get away from them so that we could remember how much we love each other.
Yeah.
And then we would go back to our kids.
That's so true. It's
Yeah.
so true. And that so many mamas, I'll say, have a harder time doing that. So it's good you're saying that, Shawn.
Yeah. It's true.
I interrupted you.
No, I was done.
Okay.
I didn't want to say
wanted
any more.
call our kids aliens.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to add it to us. What are some of the things that we do to stay faithful? I would say we, in our bathroom, we've got pictures of our early dating. And so every day I see those early years. We also, in our bedroom, have our entire pictures of from when we dated, our engagement, our babies. We see that every day, every moment. Anytime we go to bed, we see our life together. And that's something you can't replace with a romantic idea of, somebody with that guy over there would think I'm amazing today when Jeff is really frustrated with me.
Yes.
So just even those kinds of things, it shifts the way that you see the gift of your relationship. That is so much, Jeff always says it. He goes, this is real.
Right.
That over there is just a fantasy. This is real. So one other thing that we do to keep up.
Yeah, I mean that for me is the discipline. I've had to. That's the things I try to repeat to myself when I'm driving in the car and there's this fancy jogger in tight shorts or whatever running down the side of the road. I'm like, I've got something that's real, and it keeps me from, it bounces my eyes away, and it keeps me from looking back, because I think, thank you, God, for my wife, for my girls, and you're helping me guard my heart right now. Or it's that contrast between what is real for me and what is not real for me, and what I can enjoy and he gave and as a gift, and what I can't and what is not for me, for someone else, And so I think that's a part of it. But I think too, knowing that, I mean, even having girls for me has been pretty remarkable. It makes me I know that my behaviors in front of them are going to be what they look to from other guys and their behaviors. And so if I'm setting a low bar for that and coarse joking or talking about, just letting things kind of slide out of my mouth, or even in the movies that we watch, if there's something that comes up and it's like, I don't know what to do about this, so we were just letting it play. Or no, I mean, in some respects, being thoughtful and intentional and setting the tone for my family and for my daughters, so that they kind of go, and then we explain why. We're just like, oh, that's bad. No, it's like, well, let's talk about what just happened, And I think some of that narrative and just capturing the moments of everyday life has been a rhythm that's helped us stay true to each other,
And
to remember. And memory is a really big part of this, but also not to hide either. And I just know the power of hiding in my own life, but also in other lives that I've walked with, that when you have something that's hidden and you just don't want to talk about it, or are not keeping it because you're not proud of it, that builds, and that's where the enemy uses that. Satan himself uses that to build something bigger and bigger and bigger. And that hiding is, I'd say, the starting point for so many troubles and breakdowns that are either going to happen quick and fast and furious, or going to take a long time, but then eventually explode, And so a commitment to not having hiddenness in our relationship.
Yeah, we call them secrets, because secrets hold power.
That's right.
But when you let them out, lose their power.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
They lose their power.
Very good, yeah.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about struggles that you guys have had. I think our listeners, I can imagine some of them may be feeling shame right now as they're thinking about the hiddenness in their life, or really struggling right now and being excited about their significant other. Tell us a little bit inside scoop on your marriage.
We don't really have any struggles.
That's not true.
Okay, well, I'll start it. We decided we're going to be real. So you listeners, just get ready.
That's this.
So Shawn, being a hyper romantic, is like a dream for a lot of women. And myself included. God knew that I needed someone very, very expressive and kind and loving, because I struggled so much knowing what love was from my childhood. So God gave me this amazing man who tells me I'm beautiful like every day, even when I look horrible. So those things are so amazing for me and such a gift. What was really challenging for me was that because of my childhood issues, and I will throw in there cultural expectations, just all the things that we learn, whether we want to or not, from our culture. My fear of intimacy and vulnerability, packaged then with the expectation of a really romantic husband, really threw us in, I'm not kidding, in our first year of marriage. Like, we're very much not sexually compatible. And I would say, we were real smart in the sense that this was, I think, after we were married 1 year, we were like, okay, something's wrong, right? We have a problem. So we went to counseling, and we were smart enough, and we just feel like the Lord gave us wisdom at that point. We can wait 10 years and bring in a ton of baggage to counseling, or we can just get help right now. Yeah. And it was amazing. So hard, actually. So our first counseling appointment together, And the counselor, I mean, at that point, I think we called them counselors. That was when it was weird to go to counseling. Now I feel like everyone, I hope, is going to therapy.
Oh, yeah, we were
it.
hiding it. We were just a little bit of little ashamed.
can
Well,
imagine
he's
that.
a youth pastor.
Yeah.
Right?
It,
And
it takes courage to go to counseling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sex.
Yeah, we're like,
Real courage.
Yeah.
yes.
We call that sex therapy.
Yes, perfect.
No, this was not therapy. Therapy is when someone teaches you how to do something, isn't it? That's not what this was. Let's just clear that up.
Okay, you didn't get that far.
No.
Okay. This is
No.
just unpacking the baggage.
Yes. Well, in reality, the counselor looked at me after our first session and said, Marina, I just need to see you. And I want to say for about 6 months, I went to counseling for my issues, which were in many cases, I mean, obviously, Shawn is not just a bystander. He is part of this as well, and he has his own issues. But in this particular area of our marriage, which had become very quickly our biggest struggle, it was because of my fear, a lot of fear. I brought in a ton of fear. And I'm not going to say that 6 months of counseling made it amazing. It brought open a lot of things that I needed to deal with, and it helped me begin my process of healing. But after being married 26 and a half years, I still feel like, I'm still learning, I'm still healing, I'm still really working on that. So I would say for our 26 and a half years of marriage, our biggest struggle, because we get along so well. We are best friends. We laugh our heads off together. So I can't say that our sexual issues are because he's not meeting emotional needs, because he is. And yet it's my issue because there's something, and I just will say, in the church, we just don't talk about it. So it already, as a young woman who was just seeking after Jesus, there was already shame, when it came to sex, because it just doesn't seem like it's healthy or right or clean or from God, because our culture has idolized it so much. And I had to turn my face first, right? Just like, nope. Those desires, nope, you shut them off. And then all of a sudden you're supposed to get married and become like a sex goddess. And boy, that did not work for me. So I'm sad that years and years ago, this was never discussed. And I would say I'm so happy now that we're finally discussing it as Jesus lovers. Like, we got to talk about this kind of stuff. It's because these are secrets, and then it builds shame, and then you're disappointed in each other, right, as partners. And then all of a sudden, you're just like, forget it, my feelings are gone. And then you've lost the desire, So for us, I think it's just, we want to be open books, but it is really difficult when you don't have any guidance about how to talk to about something that is uncomfortable and loaded, right? This is super complicated because it is the most vulnerable thing that you could ever do. And it's so minimized in our culture on all of the, movies, magazines. I mean, sex is talked about all the time. And so then when you as a human are like, Guy, I just don't feel that free about it. And I've got all of these weird emotions about it. But wow, the people on the TV and the movie, they just don't seem to have any of those complicated emotions with it. And then you feel weird, and then you don't know what to do.
Well, it's because the people in the TV and movies, they're liars. They're characters.
I know.
And they're portraying something that's actually not true. And that false narrative plays into the life of the husband as well. And so my part in this was, so Marina was dealing with deconstructing a lot of the pains and the ways that she's adapted to a lot of the stuff from her childhood and her self-worth and all of that. And meanwhile, I'm kind of standing over here being like, kind of feeling, I guess, honestly, feeling let down.
Yeah.
And feeling like, well, come on. Take your clothes off. Let's get going.
Yeah.
And, just like a lot of other men, they say that women are kind of like slow cookers when it comes to sexuality, and guys are like microwaves. I'm like, boom, I'm ready to go. But it just wasn't like that. And so, but because we love the Lord and we're committed to each other, what that does is it forces you deeper. It forces you underground, and then you take that struggle to the Lord. and you learn what does he have for me, and what kind of husband do I need to be for Marina to help her with this issue. And that is so opposite from our culture, because what our culture, especially now, is telling us is that like sexual compatibility is this big topic. And that's most of the reason why so many people, they fall in love and they say, well, let's live together first and make sure that we're compatible. And that is just such a load of crap. That's not how it works.
So backwards.
In fact, the statistics show that if you live together before you get married, you're actually more likely to get a divorce.
That's right.
Because it doesn't work. It's about commitment. And so what it's done for us is that has been one of the things that God has used to build our strong marriage. You know, historically, we have not had a super compatible sex life. And it's been 26 years. But man, I would do anything for this lady because that's what God has done through this struggle. And that's God's design for marriage.
Tara has talked about this before in other scenarios, and I love this example that you use on. She talks about emotional and spiritual intimacy and physical intimacy, but emotional and spiritual intimacy as like the main course. Right? It's like in the food pyramid for healthy eating. It's like the breads, the grains, the balance, right?
Yeah.
The balanced diet that you need, vegetables and fruits, and it's making sure that that's kind of your main thing, and it's something that you need each day, and you need that. And the physical intimacy, and there's particularly sex. So there's lots of non-sexual intimacy that is very important that should be sprinkled on the day you guys are holding hands right now. I just see that there's an example of that.
See?
I love that.
If you could see it.
The physical intimacy, sexual intimacy, like a dessert. And for a lot of people, we don't eat dessert, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We get sick of it, right? And it's special, and it's significant, and it's wonderful when we enjoy the dessert of physical intimacy that God gives us. But to expect it, or to think of it that it is our breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and not ever have those other substantial pieces, emotional and spiritual intimacy, you're gonna get sick of it, and you're going to get sick.
Well, that's what, to your point, Shawn, of building a marriage on sexual intimacy as that being the main piece. So to build a life on dessert, we're going to get unhealthy really fast. And again, I appreciate your vulnerability, your willingness to be so open, because this is actually a really common, it's one of the number one common struggles for couples. So that just realness is huge. And the other piece is, we end up starting out of the gate with relationships with high expectations, and we think it's going to happen fast. And so kind of a mantra that a mentor of mine gave me, she just said, lower your expectation and expand your timelines. And it frees you up to the journey of 26 years to see what God's got for you. And, as newlyweds, you would have been like, we're going to tackle this in 2 years, 6 months of counseling.
Yes. Yeah.
And now you're looking back in hindsight and going, wow, this has been a part of our story that's taken us deeper, taken us underground. And yeah, you can't live on dessert.
Right.
And yet sometimes we don't get dessert, to be honest. And a lot of couples, it is hard because there isn't like a movie or an online course that teaches you what is healthy sexuality as much as we'd like.
Well, what I want to say, and this isn't a plug for Tara's book, but it is. Courageous is so good. And there is a chapter on sexual
8.
health. And it really, really spoke to me and reminded me, because I am in an incredible marriage. And yet I can get into this rut of my old thinking, which you called it something in your book, a
neuropathway.
Oh, look at that. I remembered part of it. But it's like ruts, and you can sink back into the way you've always thought. But the description that you gave of the purpose for married sexuality and God's purpose helped redefine to me, like, this is not, and I mean, just keeping it real, sometimes I'm just going to meet the needs of my husband because I don't want his eyes to stray, right? I don't want him, so I'm going to meet those needs. That is not the purpose of married sex. So that was so good for me. And I just read like, oh, this is meant to be like, yes, dessert, but even more than that, in my mind, this incredible experience of bonding that you cannot do with anybody else. And yeah, when I'm just meeting his needs, that is not happening. So therefore, I am not experiencing nor allowing my husband to experience the actual purpose that God made this in marriage for. And then my achiever inside is like, oh, no, you didn't just tell me I am not doing that right. Mm-hmm. So it was so good for me. I'm redefining, I'm trying to redefine.
It. Good. And expanding the definitions of what our stories tell us, yes. Our culture's telling us. And going back to part one, Shawn, you talked about God telling us who we are. He tells us who we are with the sexuality piece too. And again, what's so interesting is it's super unique. Each couple has such a unique story here, and it's meant to be private. It's not meant to be something that's displayed for everyone to share and to know. Yeah. And generations now, kind of it's flip-flopped that we share all of that. So all this to say is you guys are an incredible example of choosing to walk in the hard, but choosing to walk with your God and with one another. And we're seeing major fruit of that. You are an example of a couple who loves each other. I think people are always surprised. What? You've been married this long and you still like each other? Yes. You do. You're holding hands.
They're still holding hands.
I know. And they will be when they're 85.
Yes.
So again, even with a real struggles. So thank you for being that couple. We need good examples, and keep being real and sharing those with everyone around you. And it's just been such a gift to hear from you. Shawn, you want to end with something?
I got a nugget.
Listen carefully.
I got a nugget for the men. Because we lived in a really, really messed up culture, and the entire, living in this over-sexualized society, it is targeted towards men. So I want to tell you why I'm holding Marina's hand. The reason I'm holding... The reason I'm holding Marina's hand is because just like Christ defines our destiny, and he gives us definition about who we are, it's the man's job to define the wife's destiny and her identity in the marriage. And so I reached out my hand when she was talking about things that are very, very vulnerable to her, to let her know, just kind of in this unspoken gesture, that I'm with you. I love you. That'll never change. No matter what you're going through, I love you. Because that's who she is. I give identity to her, and I give safety and security to her because I've received it from the Lord.
That's the only way you can give it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it really is his voice that defines our identity. And when you're listening to his voice and you're repeating what he's saying about her, it's like him. And our women can tell when it's his voice and like his. And when it is, then we're doing and living into our potential as men under God, following his lead. It's like him. So I love that. And I'm going to hold your hand out too, Terry. Okay.
See the power of modeling.
And I will say one other thing too. The more I do that, the more I give to her in that way and sacrifice like that, it's really, 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 really good for my sex life.
Yeah, it can be. It can be, right? Yeah, it's dessert. Dessert shows
That's
up.
right.
The kind
so,
we love.
Not necessarily to kind of put a plug in there like this is self-serving, but it's like reciprocity.
Yeah, God was clever. Yeah, he was clever in how he designed us. And that is, if you're curious to listen a little more on healthy sexuality, we did do a podcast with our sex therapist at Living Wholehearted, Melinda Arnold. I'm not sure what episode it is, but if you scroll, it's one of our first. And we plan to bring more on to talk more about healthy sexuality because we are passionate, Marina, about helping the church to talk about this. It's really an important piece of who God made us to be, and it's not something to be shoved into the corner. So thank you for bringing that up today.
Yeah, thank you, Shawn and Marina, for your integrity, your honesty, your vulnerability, and we value you guys so much as leaders, and both as individuals and as a couple. And if you guys want to know more about what they're doing, again, go back to catalystnorthwest.org. Did I
Yeah,
get that right?
yeah. CATALYSTNW like Northwest.org. And that'll point to the front page of our faith-based nonprofit, and then there's all kinds of stuff in there.
And if ladies want to come see Marina and get involved in exercise, in some of the fitness stuff you're doing, or learn more about that, where can they go to learn more about what you're up to as a fitness trainer?
Oh, probably Facebook. Yeah, just Marina Mitchell.
That's it.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, subscribe to the Living Wholehearted podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or anywhere you listen. Make sure you give us a review, and that will help others learn about how to grow in relational wisdom and becoming a leader of integrity. Until next time.
Thank you for joining us in being a leader committed to shrinking the integrity gap between the values we espouse and the values we actually live out in practice.